I'm in the living room at the front of my daughter's house. I've pretty much finished the renovation upstairs, so now I'm going to work on moving the kitchen and adding a half bath. This middle room provides an additional sitting area, but this is where I'm going to put the new kitchen. She has one of my tongue drums that I made a few years ago. If you walk through this doorway, you enter the kitchen area. One side has the water heater, the washer and dryer, and the fridge. And that's where I'm going to put the new bathroom while keeping the water heater and rearranging the washer and dryer. If you turn around, this tiny area is the kitchen with one of my cutting boards on the counter. It's pretty run down and not very functional. I'm going to transform this kitchen space into a TV room. I'm going to open up part of this load-bearing wall to be about 9 feet wide. I'm going to put the cabinets along that wall, and you can see that I already narrowed the archway when I updated the living room in preparation for this remodel to give more wall space for cabinets. And we'll put a pantry in that corner. This is the space after we removed all the furniture. And this is how it looked after we pulled down all the plaster, and man, was that a dusty job. And here's a sneak peek at what it will look like in the end. So let's get started on the remodel. With the plaster down in the new kitchen area, I cut open the ceiling all the way to the electrical panel near the back of the house so that I could run some new wires. My 18-volt drill really struggled to drill through these old true 2-inch joists, so I switched to a corded drill, but it was a challenge because it was a little too long to fit between the joists. I'll freeze the video here because I want to point out the PVC pipe hanging from the ceiling. I installed that last year when I renovated the upstairs bathroom in anticipation of working on the kitchen. So I will connect the drains for the kitchen and bathroom sinks to that vent pipe. That will be better than the former kitchen that only had an air admittance valve under the sink. I removed all the old unused knob and tube wiring and ran 5 new 20 amp circuits, a 15 amp circuit for the microwave, and a 240 volt 8 gauge cable for the range. After running the wires, I removed a portion of the hardwood floor so that I could frame the brick wall with 2x4s. I keep discovering windows in this house, and there were 2 windows along this wall that had been boarded up. There was another window in the old kitchen that had also been boarded up. We need the wall space, so we'll just cover them up again. I'll use my circular saw and a chisel to notch out around the windowsill. Back in my workshop, I'm going to prepare the beam that I will use to support the upper floor joists when I open up the load-bearing wall. The house is built with old 2x4s and 4x4s that are a true 4 inches wide. So I'm making this beam by gluing together 2 2x12s, some 3/4 inch plywood, and some 1/2 inch plywood. These are 12 feet long, so I had to butt together 2 pieces of plywood to get the length that I needed. But I made sure that the seam of the 3/4 inch plywood was not in the same place as the seam of the 1/2 inch plywood. Back at the house, I've insulated the brick wall, and with my laser level, I'll continue to install the electrical receptacles. The next day the glue has cured and I'm back in the workshop to trim the beam to length and width. It's pretty thick, so I had to cut it part way on the table saw and then flip it over and cut the remaining part. Back at the house, I've installed some temporary supports to hold up the ceiling joists before removing a good portion of the load-bearing wall. I was smart enough to put the beam between these temporary supports before I erected them because it would have been hard to get them in afterwards. I have a helper today to help remove the old studs and lift up the beam because it's quite heavy. You can see some wood rot from water damage, so I'll clear that out and place the new studs to sit on a joist directly above the steel beam. This is the end where there was no wood rot, so I'm able to place the stud directly against the existing stud and then nail it in place. On the side where the base plate and flooring had rotted, I'll need to place the new stud away from the existing stud so that it's directly on the steel beam. And then I'll nail in some cross pieces to attach it to the closest stud. And now I'll add a second stud to give it plenty of strength to support the overhead beam. This new kitchen area will have a tile floor, so I need to cut a clean line where it joins with the hardwood in the living room. It doesn't need to be perfect because I will cover this with a transition at the end. And then I used my multi-tool to cut right up to the edges so that I could remove the rest of the hardwood. There's a bit of a hump where the steel beam is, so I will need to deal with that. With the flooring removed, I discovered a rotted joist that was directly under the dishwasher, so clearly there had been a leak in the past. The main stack in the whole area under the kitchen is inaccessible from the crawl space because of that steel beam that is only a few inches from the ground, which blocks off access. What they had done when they redid the plumbing is they removed the original hardwood and subfloor, and instead of putting on a new subfloor, they nailed on these strips and then placed the new hardwood across the joists without a subfloor. I'm going to remove these strips and then mill up new subfloor pieces back at my workshop. I'm not going to use plywood because I need something thicker, and I want to slowly increase the thicknesses of the subfloor pieces as they approach the new kitchen area to eliminate that hump. I'll remove the rotted joist and then replace it with a 2x12. I'll need to notch out each end where it sits on the steel beams. Moving over to where the bathroom will be, the floor joists are far from being level, so I'll need to sister in a couple of joists and replace one that was rotted under the water heater. I used a screw to hold things in place, and then I used nails because they are less likely to shear off. This palm nailer came in handy for the tight space. Now I'll start to work on the drain for the new bathroom. I'll use this clean out to attach a 4-inch pipe for the toilet. The center of the drain needs to be at least 15 inches from the side wall and 12 inches from the back wall, so I'm measuring out a little bit more than 16 inches from the brick to allow for studs and drywall that will be added. I'm using PEX tubing for the new plumbing, and I'll add a main shutoff so that we don't have to go out to the street anymore to turn off the water. And I'm using a manifold to distribute the cold water to all the different places. Next, I'll work on plumbing for the kitchen sink. These old 2x4s are too thick for my hole saw, so I had to stop and remove some material before drilling all the way through. That first hole that I drilled for the hot water over on the left went directly into a joist, so I'll put both the hot and cold water on the right side of the drain. Next, I'll drill a hole for the dishwasher that's going to be in the island. Now I've squeezed myself in the crawl space to cut holes through the joists to run the drain line over to meet the drain pipe from the sink. It was a really tight space, so I ended up removing a bit of the subfloor so that I could do the plumbing from above. When going across the joists, you have to cut the pipe into pieces that are short enough and then couple them back together. That's the kitchen drain pipe in my right hand, and the drain from the dishwasher is coming from my left side. Then at the other end, I will join it into the existing PVC drain pipe from the old kitchen. Back in the crawl space, I'll push up the hot water line for the dishwasher, the 20 amp cable for the power, and a low voltage cable for the under cabinet lighting that will go around the toe kick of the island. You can see that the toilet connects to the main stack with a kind of lazy river arrangement of piping to get the right angle. And it branches over to the drain pipe for the bathroom sink. With all the plumbing done, I've insulated between the floor joists, and I will install the flooring. Each piece is numbered because they get slightly thicker as they get closer to the kitchen area that does have the original subfloor. Now I'll frame along the wall where the bathroom and water heater go so that I can run piping, electrical, and insulate it. Yes, that's another boarded up window that was behind the water heater and washer dryer. I'll put in a P-trap for the washing machine drain, and I've installed a washing machine outlet box. I installed it upside down and put the hot on the right side because the color-coded levers were too difficult to remove. Next, I framed up the bathroom and left just enough space for a 30-inch pocket door. Next, I insulated the bathroom wall, being sure to have insulation behind the PEX because that's an exterior wall. It doesn't get that cold here, but you don't want to take any risks. Now I need to drill a 4-inch hole through the brick wall for the bathroom exhaust. I had already drilled one several months earlier for the dryer vent. I decided to put in strapping across the ceiling with these furring strips before installing the drywall. This makes it easier in the future if we ever want to run wires in the ceiling and go across the joists. I have a drywall panel lift, but I misplaced one key part that prevented me from using it, which was very frustrating. So I had to improvise with a strip of wood to support one end while I lifted up the other end. It would have been easier to do this from side to side instead of from end to end, but then I would have had a problem when I got to the middle of the room. One advantage of having the strapping is that I don't have to cut the length of the sheet to line up with a joist. Next, I wired up the outlet for the range. I used a stout bracket for the PEX pipes to secure them to the studs. On the outside of the bathroom wall, I added some blocking to make it easier to install the TV mount without having to worry about lining it up with the studs. Now I'll install the LED lights, which is simple enough. You just need to connect all the blacks together, all the whites together, and all the grounds together. And they work. And the dimmer switch works. Now I'll finish by installing the drywall and cutting around the arch. Before installing the drywall inside the bathroom, I will put in some blocking to attach the sink. I built this little bulkhead to hold the exhaust fan and to conceal the dryer vent hose. Here's how it looks at this point, so I just need to finish up the drywall. I sanded the drywall and then primed it and painted it before tiling the floor. That's better than tiling first and then having to be careful about paint drips. Now it's painted and the room is looking bigger and brighter. And here's the bathroom with the toilet and sink just sitting there to see how they will look. To prepare for tiling, I laid down 1/2-inch hardy backer board and I staggered the sheets to help minimize visible ridges. And then I used joint tape and patched with thin-set mortar. This is not the same mesh tape that you would use on drywall. This is special mesh tape designed for backer board. I laid out the tile with spacers just to see how it would end up along the wall. Then, with my level as a straight edge, I cut all of the first tiles to length so that everything would line up. The trickiest tiles were the ones that fit around the closet door. Everything after that would be full-size tiles, except for the ones along the left wall, so I was ready to begin. Since I had white tile, I used white thin-set mortar. I back buttered each tile before laying them, and then I used tile leveling clips to prevent any lippage. That's all I managed to do the first day. And then I laid down all the remaining tiles on the second day. It was a big job because it wasn't just this open space. I also had to lay all the tile in the bathroom and in the little closet for the water heater. So that involved a lot of tile cutting. After cleaning any bits of mortar stuck in the grout lines, I was ready to apply the black grout. It took a lot of wiping and a lot of water changes to clean that up. After the tile was in, I was able to get the water heater hooked back up. Finally, my daughter was able to shower at home again. Before finishing up, I trimmed out the tile at the end of the TV room. I used a really nice piece of walnut as a transition down to the steps. So all the infrastructure is in place, and that took me about 3 months with me working nights and weekends, including me commuting to DC every other week for work. Now I'm ready to start building all the cabinetry for the kitchen.